Hi, I'm Dr. Yesenia Madas here at Brookdale Community College. Today we have Emmy Award winning journalist John Quinones. Hi, John.
Hi, Yesenia. How are you?
I'm
Dr. Maddox. Right?
very well. Very well. How are
Good,
you?
good, good. Thank you. Good to be here.
We're happy to have you. I have some questions for you. At this point in your professional life, where you're a national figure, an Emmy Award winning journalist, can you point to a personal formative experience that got you here? Tell me your story.
Oh, it's a really interesting story because I grew up in poverty in South Texas, in San Antonio, in the barrio, in the Mexican community. Spoke no English when I was 6 years old. In fact, I'll tell a funny story about when I went to the first grade. The teacher didn't speak Spanish, and I didn't speak English, and there was no kindergarten before this or anything. We couldn't afford it. So on the first day of class, the bell rings at 10 in the morning, and the kids, of course, go out to recess. And where does little Juanito go? I went home. I walked 2 blocks, and my mother, at this age of 6 years old, my mother goes, ¿Qué pasó? What's up? What happened? I said, Se acabó. It's over, Mom. I love school. 2 hours, and you're done. She grabbed me by the ear and took me back to class. I think the biggest turning point for me was a program called Upward Bound that took students from the inner city and prepared them for college. They knew that the public school system was failing us, and this great government program that was part of the war on poverty by the Johnson and Kennedy administrations way back in the 70s and 60s allowed these youngsters like me who had some promise to be better prepared, and then got us into college, that preparation. So that was a big deal. There's always the teacher, of course. I had an English teacher. When all of the rest of society told me that I'd never amount to anything, including school counselors who said, when I would ask them, can I go to college someday, they would say, well, yeah, John, but we're thinking maybe wood shop or metal shop or auto mechanics, because they saw me as just another Mexican kid from that area that really didn't have much promise to make it in college. But there was one English teacher, Mrs. Gutierrez, in the 10th grade, who loved my writing. And she said, your essays are tremendous. Have you ever thought about journalism? And so I signed up with a school newspaper in my high school, and I became the chief of editorials. She was a big, big part of me making it into college and Upward Bound.
What inspires you?
Telling stories that matter, lighting the light of the camera on issues that are otherwise undiscovered. I know it sounds like a cliche, but giving a voice to the voiceless, people who don't have a voice, going to places where the media has ignored any segment of the world's population, and exposing human rights violations, exposing corruption, exposing injustice. I think when journalism is done right, those are the stories that we should be doing, and those are the stories that inspire me. When I tell those stories and they go on the air and a difference happens because we exposed it, there's no greater feeling than to know you're saving children who lived in the sewers of Bogota, a story that I did. No greater feeling than saving children who were slaves, Haitian children in the Dominican Republic cutting sugar cane. No, the world knew nothing about it until we told their story. When those stories are aired and broadcast and a difference comes and they're saved, that's what it's all about.
Can you tell us the concept of What Would You Do? How did the show come about? How do you decide the episodes?
Well, we came up with the idea because we read the New York Times Sunday magazine has a column by a columnist named Randy Cohen, and he writes a column called The Ethicist. And my good friend Chris Whipple, a producer at ABC, and myself came up with the idea, why don't we try this? He would talk about dilemmas that we face in our everyday lives. But we took it a step further. We said, what if we create those dilemmas with actors and then force people to either act or not act, to either step in or step away? The very first one we did was about a nanny who was neglecting the children that she was supposed to be taking care of in a park. How do you tell the parents of that child that the mother's not doing her job? She's on her iPad and her iPod and listening to music or texting or emailing. Meanwhile, the child is running off into the street. That was the very first one we did, and it met with some success, and then we did more and more and more. The ideas come from everywhere. We read what's in the news. We try to make them very current. so that we can act on what's in the news. And we have a contest. People recommend ideas.
As a result of your show, have you received any feedback that points to the influence your show is having on viewers? Are more people stepping up?
Yeah, I mean, whenever we break the scene, we do any one of our scenarios, time and again, more and more people are coming up to me and say, you know why I stepped in this time? Because I had seen your show. And I promised my kids that if I ever witnessed anything like this, I would do something. And so I had to. I was compelled to do so. I think it is making a difference. Schools are using it in their classes, in their psychology and sociology classes, in high school and in college. I think it is.
Before the creation of this show, was there ever a time that you wish you had intervened and you didn't?
Oh man, I was raised to be very, very involved in the world around me because I grew up in a tough neighborhood. There were many times when people needed help, and my mother especially was the kind who would give willingly and immediately, and she raised us to do that. So I'm very involved when I see something happen. I'm very emotional. I have really deep-seated feelings about people in need. So I'd like to think that I do. And was there ever a time? I'm sure there was a time when someone was begging for money or on the streets, and I presumed, like many of us often do, that, well, he's an alcoholic, he'll probably use that to drink, where I might not have stepped in. Today, I think I would buy that person a meal and maybe not give them money.
After the cameras are off, how do you deal with these real life ethical situations? Does it take an emotional toll on you?
Yeah, I mean, when we're watching it unfold throughout the day, because every day we spend the whole day on one scenario, so we'll do it 15 times. We'll run it again and again and again. And many times, of course, there'll be people who step away and just don't give a damn, to use a very harsh description. They will just not care, and that hurts when you see someone. We just did one, a homeless man who went into a restaurant and wanted a meal, and the guy said, "You're dirty, you're smelly, get out." Even though someone else had bought him a meal, he wouldn't allow him to eat there. And a lot of people agreed with him. Some people said, "Why don't you throw him in the dishwasher and give it a few cycles? He's dirty." Someone else said, "Why don't you feed him croutons off the floor if he's that hungry?" So of course you feel like, how can anyone be that cruel? But just when you're about to get ready to throw in the towel on all of humanity, along comes a hero, and in every one of our scenarios there are at least one or two heroes who step in and do the right thing and just inspire you and restore your faith in humanity.
Of your most memorable episodes, what do you think is most relevant for today's college student?
Oh man, that's a tough one. They're all relevant, I think, because we all encounter bullying and racism on the whole world, including college campuses. We did one on hazing for those involved in fraternities and sororities, where the students were really given a tough, were treated like trash as they were trying to obviously enlist in the fraternity or sorority. And people joined in the embarrassment that they were putting on these young students. I think that kind of has a lot to do with college kids. But the more touching ones have to do with bullying, whether you're gay or of an ethnic group that's picked upon. The one that comes to mind for me was the one we did on a Muslim woman who was refused service at a coffee shop simply because she was wearing her Muslim attire. The guy behind the counter posed pretended he was a racist, and he told her, "I'm not going to serve you. We're fighting people who look like you in Afghanistan and Iraq." Would anybody stand up to that? And even though some folks did not, there were others who did, and did so heroically, and we were all in tears at the end of that scenario. That would be a great one, I think, for college kids to look at.
Thank you, John. We'll be back after a short break.
flip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Every day, I get to give your dreams a chance. I love my job at New Jersey Lottery because people really do beat the odds and win, and we benefit education and institutions. I came to Brookdale after being a high school dropout and a former jockey, and Brookdale really taught me how to take my life by the reins and have confidence in myself as a student. When I think about Brookdale, the words that come to mind are integrity, diversity, self-motivation, and success. The faculty at Brookdale, absolutely amazing. So engaging, from the counselors to the professors. And I love the beautiful campus and all the fantastic friends and relationships that I make and still have to this day. My name is Jackie Fiorito. I manage public relations at New Jersey Lottery, and I got my start at Brookdale.
Welcome back. We're here with award-winning journalist John Quinones. John, as you know, in the state of New Jersey, we've had a highly publicized case dealing with privacy and bullying. What course of action would you tell families and educators promoting civility and respect? How would you encourage more bystander intervention?
I think, show them the show. Force them to watch What Would You Do? Because you never realize what it's like until you're in that moment when you see someone being victimized. What happens is that a lot of these bullying scenarios happen in private or behind your computer screen. No one is watching, so it's very easy for these cowards to pick on someone because no one is watching them. We bring it out in the open, so we make it real. If you're pushed into that position, and being in one of our scenarios, if you're lucky enough to be caught up in one, and I mean that, lucky, because you get to feel what it's like, and that'll transform you when you realize the damage that can be done, the hurtful words that are often said. Then I think you would be more apt to step in next time you see something like this happen. It's a matter of putting yourself in that situation, walking in the shoes of a victim. And it's hard to do when you're not a victim, when you're not, a person of a certain ethnic group that's being picked on, or a gay student who's being picked on. It's easy for the rest of society not to care because they don't understand what it's like. If you force someone to be in a scenario like a what would you do scenario, then they are forced to be there. And we push it sometimes, of course. We exaggerate a little bit. But guess what? People still think it's real, and that's a testament as to how bad things are sometimes. We have a lot of work to do in trying to get our society to embrace people who are different from us.
Many of our roles at Brookdale Community College are focused around inspiring student success. Mm-hmm. As a counselor and an instructor in our first year seminar course, I help students identify a variety of skills mm-hmm. and behaviors that can foster success not just in college, but beyond. What advice would you give to college students as they live in community with others?
Advice about how to pursue a certain goal or get along?
Advice about how to do the right thing in general. As they go into these communities, they study, they go to college, they become educated, and they go into the communities. How do you give them advice about doing the right thing?
Oh, it's a lot of that you're born with. A lot of it is how you were raised. Our psychology, the experts who've appeared on What Would You Do and explained why certain people step in and why certain people don't. They always tell us that there are two main things that'll dictate whether you're the type of person who gets involved. One is whether you were a victim yourself. If you were ever picked on and can relate to the victim, you will be more apt to speak up because you know what it's like. The other thing is the way you were raised. If your parents raised you to be loving and to be embracing and to be protective of your fellow man and woman, then you're more apt to be like that. If you were raised not to care, it's harder. So I think you have to educate yourself. You have to surround yourself and stop yourself. Because look, the experts also say that we often react and we judge someone by their appearance because since the caveman days, it's a matter of survival. You know, in thousands of years ago, we're programmed. It's in our DNA to say, wait, feels dangerous. You know, that person in that dark alley, he looks like he's going to assault me. What we have to remind ourselves is that we don't live in those days anymore. And even though the natural response is to be very critical of someone because of the way they look, you have to stop yourself. So if we could all just stop ourselves when we make a judgment about someone, whether it's their religion or their skin color or their funny accent that they speak with, stop yourself and say, what am I doing? Why am I judging that way? And if we could all just learn to take a breath, and before we react to someone and ridicule or bully, I think we would not do it because we would realize, listen, this doesn't make sense, my reaction to this, whatever the situation might be.
Do you find that happens with the people that you're essentially filming on the show and they're having that real reaction? Do you see ever that they have that aha moment?
Oh yeah, I know, you see it right on camera, and our hidden cameras zoom in and they capture that, and that's my favorite part. Sometimes they're just torn as to what they might, you can read it in their eyes as to what they might or might not do. I love that. I love the fact that sometimes they even change their mind. We had a guy the other day who was very ridiculing of a homeless person, and then came around when he realized how bad what he was doing was. And in fact, it was hurtful. He changed his mind. And there was a sort of a metamorphosis right on camera.
I love
so you
that
see it.
word.
Yeah.
Metamorphosis. What's your personal favorite? Do you have a personal favorite?
I think it was the one I did where I posed as one of the actors. We were doing a scenario about Latino day laborers who go into a deli and try to order a food in Spanish. So these workers are in, and we have the guy behind the counter, again, play the role of a racist. And he's saying, I'm not going to serve you guys. If you don't speak English, you're not going to be served here. This is America. You have to learn English. We're building a wall to keep you people out of here. Get on your truck. Get back to Mexico. Go to Taco Bell. He was just saying horrible things to these Mexican day laborers who were actors and pretending that they didn't speak English. And I was one of those actors. It was my favorite because even though I knew that this was all part of a show, of course, it's my show, the words that he used against us, cut through me like a knife, because I know that those words are sometimes used against Mexican day laborers. The way that people refused to help us when we would say, please, would you tell him in Spanish, por favor, dígale que me compre un sandwich. Would you tell him to buy me a sandwich, please? People would turn away and say, no, I'm not going to do that. I can't help you. Go to Taco Bell, they would say. That, to me, was very telling of how much work we have to do in understanding other cultures and as a country embrace other people and other immigrants. It's a complicated issue, the whole thing about immigration. We can't just open our gates to whoever wants to come in. But once someone is here, do you refuse them a cup of coffee or a sandwich simply because they can't speak the language? I don't think so.
There were two things earlier in the segment that you talked about. One was a teacher who inspired you, and the other was about a counselor who told you you wouldn't get anywhere. To anyone that's watching right now that's either a teacher or a counselor, an educator that has influence over children, what would you say? Don't
give up on these kids. Don't judge them by their family or their accent or the skin color or their religion. Don't be so cynical that you discount someone who might be a diamond in the rough. I used to shine shoes on the streets of Guadalupe when I was 8 years old in San Antonio, Texas, the street called Guadalupe. And we would go to these bars because all the drunk guys wouldn't know how much they were tipping you. But if you saw me then and someone would have said to you, that kid there, that kid shining shoes, is someday going to be an anchorman at ABC News, you would have laughed him out of the building. And yet, it happened. My dream came true. So please, don't stop believing in your dreams. To the students, and that's what I'm here doing tonight, reminding them, inspiring them not to give up on their dreams, regardless of what society sometimes says. Society is wrong way too often, and I'm living testament to that effect. I wouldn't be here if I had given up and done what society expected me to do.
What do you think are the greatest challenges of our society today? And how do you think they will affect our students going forward?
Well, I think I'm very inspired by the younger generation. I'm very inspired by the students that I see because they have it figured out more than I did when I was growing up. So I have great hopes. Thanks to the internet, thanks to the World Wide Web, the fact that the world is much smaller, they are much more accepting of people from all different stripes and colors. And to me, that's inspiring. I'm not that worried right now.
John, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you,
I really
Yesenia.
appreciate it. Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
We really appreciate having you, for your insightfulness and for all that you shared with us. I'm Dr. Yesenia Madas. Thank you for watching Brookdale Television.